Feeling down or out of energy after an intense BDSM scene? You're likely experiencing subdrop. In this video, we're going to highlight what subdrop is and how you can remedy it physically, mentally, and emotionally. I'm Brandon the Dom. Let's dive in. So during certain BDSM scenes, particularly those involving a high level of pain, pleasure, or maybe both, the body basically goes into this reaction where it releases a lot of good feeling hormones, which increases the amount of those hormones in the bloodstream significantly. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video that I've done on Subspace, the intense experiences of both pain and pleasure, often mixed together, trigger a sympathetic nervous system response, which releases adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, oxytocin, and dopamine. At any other time during the day when you're not in the middle of an intense BDSM scene, your body is slowly releasing these hormones and chemicals at various rates to basically keep your body in homeostasis. When you engage in an intense BDSM scene, your body is flooded with these hormones very quickly, basically in the response to the trauma that your body is experiencing. And then you get a high from these all natural drugs. Subdrop is basically what happens when your body is returning to homeostasis. And in order to do so, it needs to flush out and get rid of all the extra hormones that you've dumped into the system. And in order to do that, it needs to momentarily slow down production of those natural hormones so that it doesn't fill an already full cup. It's kind of like having an all-natural withdrawal from drugs with all those nasty side effects. So what does subdrop feel like? Well, in short, it feels like shit. Your body not only has to reduce production of those natural hormones that make you feel good and regulate your mood and make you feel happy, but it also has to deal with repairing the damage that your body has endured. It's sort of like being depressed and sick all at the same time. Wonderful. And subdrop can show up differently for everyone. Just like being depressed or being sick might look different from person to person. But there are a few similarities between people that have experienced subdrop. Physically, you might feel very cold, a drop in energy levels, almost kind of like having a hangover. You may feel extreme physical exhaustion, have cravings for sugary or carby things, especially if you're low on energy. You might be thirsty, have tremors or muscle spasms, especially if you've lost a lot of electrolytes during play. You might have soreness, inflammation, or swelling, and you might also be longing for physical touch. Mentally, you might feel confused, feel insecure, or feel a little abandoned. And emotionally, this might lead you to feel lonely, sad, or very raw, vulnerable, and exposed. And the feelings of a post-scene crash could happen within minutes, hours, or even days after the scene. And don't be surprised if it comes up right at the most inconvenient times, because you have no control over when these are going to happen. So now let's talk about how to deal with subdrop. The reason that I just broke out the different categories of feelings that you might be having between physically, mentally, and emotionally, because it will help us to identify the remedies that may be most appropriate depending on what you're feeling. Because what you're experiencing is the result of hormonal processes in the body, addressing the physical and supporting its natural processes and helping you to reach homeostasis is what should be addressed first. So we'll start with physical remedies to subdrop. The things that I'm about to go over are going to help your body return to that homeostasis state and repair itself from the damage that was sustained during the scene. So first and foremost is your sleep. If you're feeling low on energy, getting high quality sleep is obviously going to help in restoring your energy levels. What's less obvious is that sleep is actually the body's natural repair system and hormone processor. While you're asleep, your body secretes cytokines, which are a very small class of proteins. And these cytokines give your body the advantage to fight off inflammation, infection, and trauma when you're injured or ill. That's going to be pretty helpful for healing all the bruises that you have littered across your body after your scene. Sleep also helps to regulate your levels of cortisol in your body, and cortisol being that steroid hormone produced by the adrenal glands. Cortisol also helps to regulate other hormones in the body. Now, the first night of sleep after an intense BDSM scene is probably going to be pretty crappy. And that's because you have an elevated amount of cortisol in your system. However, each subsequent sleeping cycle, your body will naturally begin to process and regulate these hormones. The second thing you can do physically is the high quality nutritional food. And I feel like I'm going to get some angry people with pitchforks for saying this one. But in order to create hormones that your body has been depleted of, it requires amino acids, which are basically the building blocks of everything in your body. For example, the amino acid tyrosine is the precursor to catecholamines, which is then converted into dopamine. And your body could probably really use some dopamine right now. And I'm sorry, but sugar is not an amino acid. You crave the carby, sugary thing because it's a quick source of calories and a spike of energy, which is going to feel good momentarily when you're having that sub drop, but it's going to bring you back into that drop all the same. Instead, you'd be far better off consuming high quality protein after a scene, ideally with salt and other minerals to replenish those electrolytes. And we'll cover that more in a moment. If you would like some sort of special treat after a scene that helps bring you some comfortability, I'd suggest dark chocolate instead of something sugary, which is also going to include essential minerals, flavonoids, and mildly improve brain function from increased blood flow. Our third thing, and we just mentioned it, is to drink lots of water with electrolytes. Your body has gone through a lot during that scene, and it's guaranteed that you're going to be thirsty afterwards. It's important to include electrolytes in the water that you're having afterwards in order to replenish the electrolytes that you've lost during all that sweating that you've done during all of that adult exercise. Electrolytes are basically chemicals that conduct electricity when dissolved in water. They regulate nerve and muscle function, hydrate the body, balance blood acidity and pressure, and help to rebuild damaged tissue. I personally like to use trace minerals, which includes the proper ratios of sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. The fourth thing that we can do is exercise. And no, I don't recommend hitting the gym right after your scene, but in the days following that, absolutely. Doing exercise that's suited to your physical ability can positively impact all hormones, including serotonin and dopamine, which means that you can improve both your physical and mental health and well-being in one swoop. Even just doing a few light walks outside, getting some fresh air and some sunshine is going to improve your mood and reduce your anxiety. The fifth thing we can do physically is engage in some cuddling. When you cuddle with somebody that you care about, say like your dom that you just did the scene with, your body releases oxytocin, which makes it easier for you to deal with stress. It can also lower your blood pressure and the amount of cortisol in your body, which we already know is going to be very helpful. The next thing we can do is get some sunlight. And getting in the sun is actually going to help on two fronts. First off, getting enough sunlight is going to help your body get its circadian rhythm back to normal, which is probably a little bit out of whack after you've altered it with that high level of cortisol in your bloodstream. Second, exposure to sunlight can also help to raise those beta endorphin levels, which are happy hormones that are natural painkillers and mood boosters. And that's going to be quite helpful for the state that you're in. Sunlight also encourages serotonin production, which is going to help you feel more focused, happy, and calm in your day-to-day life. And the last remedy that I'll recommend for the physical is taking a cold shower. And I can hear you now. You're like, Brandon, I'm a masochist, but I'm not that much of a masochist. I don't recommend hopping in a cold shower right after your scene, because that would actually make your levels of cortisol worse. However, if you're actually feeling subdrop a day or two after your scene, using a cold shower in the morning can help with a significant and prolonged increase of dopamine throughout the day. Additionally, taking that cold shower is going to reduce the inflammation that is happening in that sore body of yours. Now let's talk about some mental remedies to subdrop. So not only is it important to address what's happened to your body, but it's also important to address what's happened to your mind, and specifically addressing some of the thoughts and stories that you're telling yourself about the scene you just had. Part of the reason that BDSM is enjoyable and not traumatic, because we tell ourselves stories that these acts are consensual, everyone is doing them out of fun and love, and everyone still likes each other after the scene is done. However, doing those very same actions on any other given day without those stories that I just said, that would be traumatic. So if you just had a very intense scene, how easily do you think it is for your brain to draw the line between, oh, these were good consensual acts and these are bad traumatic acts? Not very likely. Just think back to maybe some of the intense scenes that you've had in the past, and how many times have you been in the middle of something innocuous like making coffee, and in the very next moment, you feel like you could cry your eyes out, or you're upset at your dom for no seemingly apparent reason, even though both of you were happy-go-lucky the night before. In that moment, your brain is trying to make sense of what happened. It's basically your brain trying to construct a logical narrative for why your body is in the state that it is currently. So to help your little monkey mind through that process, here's what I recommend. So our first thing is proper aftercare immediately after the scene. And what that aftercare looks like is not as important as making sure that it actually happens. Aftercare is basically your transition period from the potentially trauma-inducing event into the regular world. What's often helpful during this time is having somebody, like your dom, to reorientate to the regular world, helping you process what happened and being there to remind you that you're a good person, you're loved, and someone is there to care for you. If you don't have the proper aftercare that you need, there's the potential for you to feel abandoned or unloved, which is only going to kick those negative stories into overdrive and make that drop much, much harder. So as a tip to all my doms out there, love your little subby after you've beaten them. The second thing you can do is talk to your dom. In the days that follow your intense scene, check in with your dom if you need to. All of us need reassurance, even doms, that we are in fact loved and cared for. And when your brain is feeling depressed, this need is often higher. And mental processing usually happens over days, and we don't find clarity with something until we've wrestled with it a few times. And talking with your dom can also help you rediscover why you did the scene in the first place, what you enjoyed about it, what you loved about it, and the connection that it brought between you two. The third thing that can help is connecting with other people's stories. Because guess what? You're not the first person that's ever experienced subdrop. There's been many other people that have been in this same exact situation. It's actually a normal part of the process. And that can be comforting because in a depressed state, you are more likely to think that something is wrong with you, that you shouldn't be feeling that way, when instead all of this is pretty normal. Well, normal for a misfit kinkster, that is. Connecting with other people and their stories about subdrop can help you to work through some of the thoughts and emotions and stories that you're assigning to your own. Because what you're doing in that process is basically checking the validity of what you're thinking. And you're checking that against other people that have experienced the same thing. And usually that helps you tell you that you're not crazy. Like, this is part of the process. And the last thing I'll mention for the mental aspect of things is to do meditation. There's a lot of people that have tried meditation and feel like they're not doing it right because they can't quiet their thoughts. The goal of meditation is to not quiet the mind, although eventually, after doing it long enough, it does happen for some people, but rather to help you see that the thoughts that you're having are irrelevant in comparison to everything else that's in your central awareness. That these thoughts, in fact, don't need to be grasped onto, which you may be doing during subdrop, looping on the thoughts about what happened. And this can be very helpful during subdrop because odds are you are grasping onto those thoughts, and that's causing a spiral of emotions, making that drop much, much worse. Now let's cover the emotional side of things and remedies to help with subdrop. Even if you're able to mentally process through some of the thoughts and stories that you're having about your scene, you're still likely to have some intense emotions. I strongly, adamantly, and fully recommend that you do not run away from these and that you take the proper time to feel and digest them. Whenever I play with my subs, I encourage them to let out and express whatever emotion is true for them in the moment. If you want to laugh, laugh. If you want to cry, cry. All of it's okay. Learning to be with these intense emotions, especially the ones that are triggered by this scene, can help you to see that these emotions are just sensations and energy and uncomfortable feelings, and you don't actually need to attach a story to them. So let me give you a practice that can help you do this. This is basically an intense emotion digestion practice. So to the best of your ability, I want you to pull off the thoughts and stories that you're having associated with this feeling and just focus your awareness on the sensations of that emotion. And what you're going to do is try and feel fully into whatever that sensation is. So a great example is some emotions have a heavy weight on the chest, and it can kind of feel heavy, tight, maybe a little burning sensation. That's the sort of energy that I want you to lean into to try and feel those fully instead of, turning away kind of ignoring that and just feel whatever that raw energy is, whether it's joy, anger, fear, desire, frustration, whatever it may be. And just let the emotion do whatever it wants to do in your body. Try not to grasp onto it, but also try not to push it away. You're kind of trying to remain neutral to this feeling as much as possible. You're also not trying to take ownership of this feeling, saying, I am mad. Rather, you're saying, I feel mad in my body. I feel heat, swelling up in my chest, or I feel tingly sensations through my body. But you're also not trying to deny its existence. You're just, again, letting it do whatever it needs to do in your body. If you do feel like that you're starting to grasp onto it and starting to spiral into that emotion, oftentimes there's still some story or thought or belief that you're having about that emotion that needs to peel off. Set that aside. That's meant for work to be done later. Right now, you're just trying to focus on the energy of that emotion. At some point, you're going to be like, okay, how long do I need to be doing this? And honestly, as long as it takes, because you're trying to let that emotion run its course, and eventually it will start to dissipate. And when you get to that point where you feel like that emotion has been fully felt, or you've reached a level of like overwhelm and I can't be addressing this emotion anymore, go ahead and just ground yourself back in the moment just by sort of doing a body scan, which is bringing awareness to the different parts of your body and bringing awareness to the room that you're in, what you can hear, what you can see, what you can smell. Just bring yourself back down to reality. All of that is going to help you to deal and digest maybe some of those intense emotions that have come up during the scene, and will be an excellent addition to the work that you're doing in the physical and mental realm to help with your subdrop. Although subdrop does not happen for everyone after a scene, it is likely that you have substantially increased the amount of hormones in your body, and whatever goes up must eventually come down. So just give yourself the permission to have these very normal reactions to a very intense scene that you've done. This state of subdrop, is feeling beat up and depressed, will not last forever, and you're going to be back to having fun, kinky times before you know it. If you enjoyed this video and you want to hear a little bit more about the science behind subdrop and what this neurochemical process is, I made this video before about subdrop that'll walk you through all of those hormones, what's going on in your body, and some other aspects of like, does the Dom experience subdrop? So watch that video, and until next time, thank you so much for your time and attention.